So my first step is to make the fixture to bend the rebar. And to do this, I'm utilizing some scrap angle iron I have laying around. And so first I cut two pieces to about 12 inches in length. I then ground down the surfaces on that angle iron where I was going to weld it together. And to make sure it's straight all the way across, I've clamped it together with vice grips on either end of the angle iron. And now I'm using a TIG welder to tack it together, and then I'm going to weld it up fully. And now I've got a short, approximately 2-inch long piece of 1-inch inside diameter tubing. And I'm going to weld that on the end, but I want it spaced in such a manner that there's just enough space between the angle on the angle iron, that wall that stands up there, and the tubing, so I can fit that rebar between that space. And now I'm getting a little fancy here, but I'm using the metal lathe to precisely drill a hole in the end. Then I'm going to thread that hole so that I can screw on a little end cap on the end of it, and that will come into play later on in this fixture build. And so now I've got some 1-inch square tubing that I'm going to use as my handle for this bending fixture. And my plan is to weld on 2 of those 1-inch round stock pieces onto the end of this. And so the concept here is that the angle iron piece fits into the vice clamp, gets clamped down, and then you've got the bendy handle part that slots into the angle iron piece. There's a fulcrum there, and then in addition to the one piece of round stock, there'll be another piece of round stock that will actually make contact with the rebar and help to bend that around. With that second piece of round stock welded onto the handle, you can now see why the threaded part from the lathe earlier is now important. With the rebar in the fixture, you can now screw on a little end cap on the bottom there, and that end cap gives a bit of a ridge to the bottom of this round stock that will hold the rebar in place and prevent it from slipping down and off the round stock. And so I tried cold bending it, and I'm going to move the whole bench here. Hold on. And so therefore, I switched over to the torch, and I'm going to hot bend this thing and utilize this fixture to help make that whole thing a lot easier and more standardized. And I'm measuring both sides of the leg out to the same length, and I'm going to cut those both to the same length and then weld them onto the plate, which is next. All right, so I've got some 1/8-inch plates here. I need 4 6x3-inch rectangles, basically. So I've got my adjustable square to 3 inches. And at first I used an angle grinder to cut the big pieces off of the sheet for the plate to weld the rebar to, and then I'm using a bandsaw here to cut the smaller pieces to size. I've got all 4 of the little mounting plates here, and I'm trying to arrange it on the vise, on the drill press, so that this thing, I can drill through all 4 of them at the same time. Alright, so I want the table legs to attach to the plate but then be angled off at 5 degrees. So in order to do that, I need to make a jig, which is what we're doing right here, a fixture, so that the legs can go in and then have the plate go in as well and have them set up. I can clamp them down and then weld them together at exactly the right angle and do that with all 4 of them consistently. Alright, that's too much. That, I believe, is where we want to be, right there. Alright, that's our angle. So it's not much of an angle. but it's slightly more than 90. All right, continuing to work on this fixture, I've got another plate in here welded in so that lifts the legs up off the surface here, which gives me just enough room down here to weld around in terms of the legs when they sit in here. They're lifted off enough so there'll be space on the backside to weld the legs onto the plate with. I'm going to stick one of these plates in like that. And then I want something to clamp these legs to so that they are standardized in the same angle in relation to the plate. So I'm going to weld in this little tab here, right there, and then weld another one right here. And then those, and I can clamp to that. Alright, so here's the jig in its entirety. I've got it propped up down on this end with a little piece of scrap angle iron sort of thing that I've been playing with. And that is just the right height, so that it is equal height all the way across to the actual fixture itself. So on the fixture we've got our plate in there the way we want it, our legs lined up the way we want it. We've got these little clamping spots right here where we want it, and the next step is basically start clamping everything down and then weld it up. And here they all are lined up, done welding. I'm going to see if I can do a special patina stuff on them. It's kind of an experiment. I may or may not. You may end up painting them.